Hi everybody, welcome to ZTV Live. Today is Tuesday, October 19th. It's hard to believe October is already at the end of the teen days. October 19th, my goodness, what a beautiful day it was out there. I hope everybody got a chance to go out and enjoy it. It's so great to feel that cool crispness in the air. I had the pleasure of being downtown at the bottom of King Street today with our community editor, Grace Arnold, and we interviewed a couple of folks, including the gal from O'Connell's, and talking about the permanent closure down on King Street of that bottom block that the City Council just approved, and the consensus really seems to be a positive one. It really is a wonderful atmosphere down there. If you'd like to see our footage from today, please go to our Zebra Facebook page and you'll be able to see some of our conversations. We also had the pleasure of running into Elizabeth Moscaso, another Zebra staff member, so that was a fun surprise, and we spoke with lots of people, and you'll be seeing I think some of those things come out when Grace publishes them. Anyway, today on ZTV Live, it's another episode of our favorite literary show, Reading, Writing, and Ralph, with our favorite literary editor, Ralph Peluso. Hey, Ralph, welcome back to ZTV.
Hi, Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. And you're right, it was a wonderful day, but I'm not going to talk about my golf game today.
Okay, I won't ask. You had to settle for just a beautiful day. You know, even
I had to settle for.
Yeah, what's the saying? It's a good walk spoiled or something.
You know what? My worst day on golf beats my best day in the office.
Yeah.
But today, although I don't like plugging things I do, but today a new book came out from SABR, Society of American Baseball Researchers, and this is Baltimore baseball. So it's famous games that have taken place in Baltimore. And I do have one of the articles in here that was published. It's called Unbreakable Record Passes Gentleman to Gentleman. And it talks about the game where Cal Ripken Jr. passed the great Lou Gehrig for consecutive games played. And so that's exciting, having that out.
It is. Congratulations. That's really exciting. And that's such a personal love of yours, talking about baseball, writing about baseball. So that's congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. And tonight's guest is also special. We share a background. We both grew up in New York City.
Oh, that's great. You bring him right on.
There he is, Mason Harris. How are you, Mason?
I am doing great. And it's a pleasure to be here, Susan, Ralph, with you both and with our audience.
Excellent. Great to have you here. I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Fabulous. So growing up in New York City, here's my first question for you. Did you ever hit a ball 5 sewers?
We're talking, for those who don't know, this was stickball. This was breaking off the broom from the bottom and just using the broomstick and using that as a bat and hitting a Spalding ball or a Pensy Pinky. I don't know that I got 5 stories. Lived in a small alleyway. We just hope to keep it straight and not knock them on people's windows.
Well, the great Willie Mays bragged about he could hit the ball 5 sewers long. So anyway, well, welcome. So tell the folks about your background, where you grew up, and your career, and how you came to writing this terrific book.
Well, first, thank you for using the adjective terrific. My background, I am the son of immigrants who moved over in 1949 to this country, having survived the war in Europe. They found America to be a land of opportunity and passed that to me and to my siblings. But I think a lot of immigrants feel that way. Excuse me. Um, Growing up in New York, I was in a community of other immigrants and observed that personalities, of course, were different, but that some people seemed to do better than others. And that always stuck with me. It's interesting. If even today, we can look at a child maybe who's pretty bold or confident for his or her age and think to ourselves, well, that person's going to grow up to be head of a company or in jail. And frankly, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, as we know from reading the news or looking at the news. So, excuse me again. Um, that was the crux of growing up and the neighborhood, and that's what led me on my journey to exploring this concept of chutzpah. I did go to school in New York, Queens College, went to graduate school in Buffalo, both great institutions, and I learned a lot from the people around me.
Great. So, thanks for explaining how you chose the subject. But let me ask you, what the heck is chutzpah in simple terms?
Well, I think as I've spoken around the country, when I ask that question, everybody has a sense of what it is, although there's frequently a hesitation to try and define it. It's one of those words that have different meanings. Some people think of chutzpah as definitely being good, positive. Others think of it as having a very negative connotation. So it can include synonyms such as bold, audacious, rude, arrogant, grit, a risk taker, somebody who shows a willingness to fail, a determination. One of the best words I heard was when I spoke in Oklahoma, and I asked the question to a crowd of sales professionals, and somebody said gumption. And I thought, that is actually an exceptional word to use for this. And then one of my favorites is intestinal fortitude. So chutzpah to me is a skill set, and it's comprised of 8 primary behaviors and characteristics, which we'll get a chance to speak about today.
Yes, we will. We'll go through them. I'm going to ask the audience the first question, the first trivia question. So let's get them warmed up. So I think this is relatively easy, but so let's see who's on the board. Again, type in the comment section the answer. The first person in with the correct answer wins an autographed copy of the Chutzpah Advantage. So, very easily, which language is the word chutzpah from? So, again, which language is the word chutzpah from? Now, let me give you a definition that I read about chutzpah in researching some of the questions for tonight. It says, chutzpah is the quality that enshrined a man who, having killed his mother and father, throws himself on the mercy of the court for being an orphan. What do you think about that?
That quote is from, I believe, Leo Rosten, who
Yes.
who wrote a book, The Joys of Yiddish, and he also wrote a lot about Yiddish humor. And it kind of encompasses the idea that there's a lot about of chutzpah where you shake your head, you might smile, you might laugh, and that captures a part of chutzpah. Certainly, the negative side. The person who does something wrong is unethical. In this case, it's murder, but then feels that he has the right to ask for forgiveness or for somebody to show mercy because, hey, look at the situation I'm in. I don't even have my parents anymore. So that's one. There's another good example that I liked, and this was related to, boy, I'm trying to remember who did it. I don't remember who's, it's actually been attributed to a number of people, but the quote is basically somebody back in the days when it was a lot easier to buy counterfeit software would buy a copy of Microsoft Office, a counterfeit copy, and then spend hours on the phone complaining to Microsoft's customer support because it wasn't working on his computer. That is another definition of chutzpah.
I agree. And we already have a winner. So, Susan, who's the first winner of the night?
Well, I had a feeling it might be a quick winner, and congratulations, John Gorski. He guessed Yiddish is the language where the word chutzpah comes from. So congratulations, John. A copy of the book will be sent your way.
Of course, John is the husband of Nancy Campbell Gorski.
They're in our frequent flyer mile program for sure.
They are.
They win a lot. They're smart enough to play. They play the game and they win.
Right. So, one of the things that I noted about your book was you used the term chutzpah when it as it relates to some of the great athletes and their accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, Michael Jordan. So we think of Michael Jordan as a terrific athlete who couldn't possibly have chutzpah just because he was so great, gracefully did he manipulate the court and beat his opponents. But tell us why he had chutzpah.
Well, without a doubt, Michael Jordan was one of the most skilled athletes and basketball players to set foot on an NBA court. And I've had the question, and it came up previously, where somebody said, I agree, Michael Jordan was a phenomenal basketball player, league MVP, championship series MVP. There's no doubt about how tenacious he was, how his mindset helped him. But is that really chutzpah? And I said, well, there are a couple of things in Michael Jordan's history that tells me he had absolutely chutzpah. So one is that it's well known he was cut from his high school basketball team as a freshman. So we think of people we know, including ourselves, who we get that bad news, we get rejected from a friend, a colleague, in this case, a coach who's an adult who basically said, look, Michael, you're just not good enough to make our team. A lot of people give up at that point. They stop pursuing their dreams. Well, what Michael Jordan did was he spent that year working harder, developing his basketball skills, made the team next year, and pretty much every team he's ever wanted to make since then. So that's one example of chutzpah. A second one, and this is related to, for me, chutzpah involves a recognition that we don't always succeed all the time. There's a willingness to fail to try and pursue another dream. Well, when Michael Jordan's first retirement from the NBA, he chose to try and play professional baseball. And he joined a minor league team belonging to the Chicago White Sox, which was owned, I believe, by the Chicago Bulls owner. Here he was, one of the most recognizable athletes in the world, going down to play baseball with people who probably would never make the major leagues, most likely would never have the level of success on a baseball diamond that he would have, but almost all of them were already better ball players, baseball players than Michael Jordan. But he was willing to go in there. He had the humility to say, I'm here to learn. I want to improve. Well, he didn't make it as a baseball player. But that didn't change his outlook, and he came back and won a couple more championships in the NBA. That's why I included Michael Jordan in the book, along with a handful of other athletes.
Right. Well, Jackie Robinson is another one that you describe as having a tremendous amount of chutzpah. So why don't you explain his characteristics, and because they're a little bit different than what he persevered through.
Very different. So Jackie Robinson, who's also a hero of mine, although I was coming of an age when he basically retired from baseball. But I read as much as I could. I learned about him because his impact, his chutzpah, was such that he was willing to go into an environment day after day where he knew that many people in the stands hated him, discriminated against him, wanted to see him fail because of his color. So undoubtedly, he was a talented baseball player. And there may have been a number of other equally talented ball players in the Negro Leagues at the time because blacks could not play in Major League Baseball. Well, his story is such that he managed not only to both ignore or deal with all the hatred that was thrown his way, but to demonstrate to people that you don't value others because of their race or their color. You value them if you at least want a winning team like the Brooklyn Dodgers because of their skill set. And that's a lesson we're somewhat still struggling with today. There's no doubt about it. But to me, that act of chutzpah basically impacted our society. So a different level of chutzpah, but also chutzpah.
Also chutzpah. So let me get to the second question of the night, and we'll see who's out there paying attention. So, again, first person in with the correct answer will win an autographed copy of the Chutzpah Advantage. The question is, what does the acronym MBTI stand for? And again, Mason's book, he's talking about chutzpah, and he also does a lot of relating of chutzpah to management practices. So that's a little bit of a hint. So when I went through the Chutzpah Advantage, I started thinking about it in terms of what I experienced in business, and you made a lot of similarities there to what they do teach in some of the management training courses and the like. So the first thing you say is the C in Chutzpah stands for Carpe Diem, seize the day. And explain what you mean by that and how that translates to having chutzpah.
Okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned the acronym related to MBTI. I use the letters of the word chutzpah as an acronym. 8 letters, 8 key behaviors or characteristics. The first one is carpe diem. And carpe diem, if we remember, because all of us, I'm sure, took high school Latin. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 people listening is familiar with high school Latin. But for the rest of us, we probably saw it in a movie. But in essence, it is seize the day or seize the moment. And this phrase first appeared in a book, I think by Horace, something over 2,000 years ago. In the BC era, I think 23 BC, I did some research on that. It first appeared. The idea that we don't wait for things to happen to us. We can, but if we choose to seize opportunities, to move forward, to make the decision knowingly and accepting risk and failure, we're in a better position. And so it's a pretty old concept. It's probably better known today because of an advertising firm that was hired by a fledgling sneaker company, a footwear company, and came up with the phrase, just do it. Okay? Nike, this is a core part of their brand now. The idea of carpe diem, seize the day, do it. And for me, there is no chutzpah if you don't move forward. You may have great ideas. You might be thinking to yourself on the business side, oh, I really want to start this business. But you don't, and somebody else does. And then a couple of years later, you go, oh, I should have invested in that stock because I saw right then that they were going to be great. But again, you didn't. Carpe diem basically says you have that great idea. You may be right. You may be a little bit wrong, but a lot of these are worth pursuing. So that is one of the foundational elements of chutzpah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting the way you drew chutzpah into an acronym for how you not only conduct yourself, but how you conduct yourself within a business setting. H stands for handling objections. Sorry. So talk about that a little bit.
Sure. The handling objection side, we all get objections. We get them in everyday life, within our families, at work. We get them from interactions in retail stores. I think I like this one. Well, I believe you might look better in this outfit, right? So objections are part of everyday life. Many of us get that first objection, possibly to an idea, perhaps in a meeting, because we're talking about business. And I really wrote the book as both a business book and a self-help book. So we make a suggestion in a meeting, and we find that the first response is, oh, I don't think that will work. And suddenly that shuts us down. That keeps us quiet. If we're in sales, and by the way, I believe we all sell from the standpoint or the sense that we all need to persuade others at times, that objections are inevitable. Objections can actually mean that we're moving the process, the sale, for example, further along, because now we're learning what the real issue is, why our product or service doesn't meet a need. Is it related to confusion, or is there something else, another feature or benefit we have that we need to explore? So learning how to handle objections, which is really a communication style for the most part, And for me, it's about asking more questions, not telling somebody why they need something or assuming that they accept the premises we do.
Mhm.
It's about learning what's holding them back. And handling objections occurs on a daily basis. If anything, I'd say that for those of us with teenagers, we know that they're exceptional, even toddlers, frankly, at handling objections. Uh, right? It's like, it's time to go to bed. No. Look,
Yeah.
we can't stay up. No. 10 more minutes. No, we can't do that. Pretty soon we give in. They've learned to handle it in a different way than might work in our office, but everybody's style is different.
Yeah, it is. And in the corporate world, you have to deal with no more often than you have to deal with yes. Nobody wants to say yes. They always want to say no, 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 no. You can't do it. Anyway, we have a winner. So, Susan.
Yes, we do have a winner, and it is none other than our good friend Seal Warren typed in, and she came up with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which I think indicator index. John Gorski also came in, but she came in after Seal. But Seal, congratulations, and thank you so much for playing the game.
Great. Good to have you on, Seal. Haven't seen you in a while. Hopefully, we'll see you this Christmas.
Okay.
But so let's talk about Myers-Briggs uh, trait index and how it relates to people who have chutzpah. Do you see any linkage there between specific MBTI and folks who have it?
This is the first time I've gotten that question, and I appreciate it because and I'm not an MBTI expert, but if I remember correctly, they have, I believe, 16 personality types
Right.
and 8 primaries with their opposites. So, for example, they might identify somebody after taking this profile, this assessment, as more or scoring higher on an extrovert scale versus an introvert scale. So, regardless of our personality style, there is a chutzpah behavior or characteristic that we still use at times. Some of us use it more frequently than others. When we think of extroverts, in my interviews, a lot of people said, oh, chutzpah and extroverts, that's really tied together very, very closely. Matter of fact, I don't even know that if you're an introvert, that you really will use chutzpah to get what you need. As it turns out, I ended up, when I was, again, writing the book, reaching out to another author, a gentleman by the name of Todd Churches, who wrote a book called Visual Leadership. And I really liked his book. So I reached out to him to ask if he'd consider writing the foreword for my book. And he was kind of taken aback. He said, I don't think I'm the right person because I'm an introvert. I don't really feel that that I exemplify what you're looking for as somebody with chutzpah. And I kept the conversation going. Talk about handling objections. Here I had an objection. No, I really don't think I should be writing this for you, but thanks for the offer. And I questioned him about, let's think about your life, how you define it. And you say that as an introvert, you don't have chutzpah, but you are a college professor. You've written a book. Is there any point in your life or anything you can think of where you really stretched your comfort level and did something that surprised you? And he came up with a story. He was also a fellow New Yorker, and he was moving out to California to pursue a dream. He wanted to work in the field of entertainment. He knew nobody, and he had no job, but he was going to find something when he got out there. And this, by the way, is in his foreword. Well, he gets on the plane, and as he's walking past first class, he sees somebody, Grant Tinker, who was the president of NBC at the time. And as he walks to a seat, he goes, my God, that's Grant Tinker. If only I could get a seat next to him, if only I could speak to him, he could potentially help me. So as he recounts the story, it is now 4+ hours into the trip, and he's thinking, do I go up? He stands up, he sits back down, he takes a few steps forward, he goes back, he gets another drink, wipes the sweat off his brow, and then finally he goes up He opens the first class curtain. He walks in. He goes, "Excuse me, Mr. Tinker, we don't know each other, but I'm moving to Los Angeles, and I really loved the field of entertainment. Might it be possible to speak with you for a minute?" And he says, Grant Tinker looked at him and said, "Come here and join me." And he ordered him a Coke, and they sat down, and for the rest of the flight, they spoke.
Wow.
And at the end of the flight, Grant Tinker said, "Look, this is my assistant's phone number. If you need any help, please call." So
Wow.
he thought about that and he said, "I guess I do have chutzpah when I need it."
Yeah.
So
I,
when
I
I think
think,
about MBTI and the personality characteristics, these behaviors will work. Some people will have a natural inclination towards some of them. Somebody who is more of an extrovert might be more willing to ask for things, but you don't have to be an extrovert to have chutzpah. You can be an introvert too.
yeah, I think there's probably some linkage in there, but it would be, I think if you got it, chutzpah, you got it, regardless of your personality profile. Anyway, let's give the audience the third question. All right, real simple. How many Americans still speak Yiddish? And give the answer in thousands. So, how many Americans do you estimate still speak Yiddish? One of the sections in there that absolutely captivated me was the piece you wrote on Roger Federer, and it had to do with decision making, I believe. And he made a decision early in life to give up playing soccer, and he may have had a chance to play pro soccer and to focus on tennis. And what are your thoughts when someone at that level makes that kind of decision as compared to people who are indecisive? Why does one have chutzpah and one doesn't?
Well, one of the key behaviors again of chutzpah, of the characteristics that I think is foundational, is the ability to not get hung up by decision making. We all have decisions to make. Some are small, some are large. It amazes me how often people will delay decisions and continue to delay them such that the decision ends up being made for them, which means that they have no influence on the outcome. They're presented with, okay, it's a done deal. This is what's going to happen next. I believe people with chutzpah prefer influencing what elements might be under their control, and decision making is part of that. So in Roger Federer's case, here you have what some would argue is the best tennis player of all time. There are, and you could argue for other people as well, with good cause if you follow tennis. But clearly, he was one of the best. When he made the decision, as you said, he could have gone pro as a soccer player. He was that good an athlete, that gifted, that he could have moved over. His footwork was tremendous and translated to the tennis court. He had to make a decision because he couldn't do both. Well, now think of, for all of our listeners, for ourselves, we're faced with decisions every day. Some of them are small, some of them are large. We tend, or some of us tend, to, again, get hung up by these decisions. Jeff Bezos speaks in his autobiography about a decision model that he calls a one-way door or a two-way door. The idea that if you're making a decision, and it's an easy decision, for example, for somebody in high school, should I focus on soccer or tennis and the team? They make that decision and they choose soccer. If they don't like soccer, next semester or next year, they can go out for the tennis team. That's an easy door to move in between. A little bit different on the professional level, but that's a two-way swinging door. Should be easier. But he says too often people act as if it's a one-way door, meaning that once you walk through that door, you are pretty much committed. It is much more difficult to change, to reverse what you're doing. Not necessarily impossible, but much more difficult. And too often we treat two-way door decisions as if it's a one-way door. And that's why we want more certainty in our decision, but we can't always get the certainty. There's always uncertainty in our lives. We don't know what's going to happen after we choose a path.
Right, right. I think, yeah, I think that's a great point. That's a great point. So, the other thing you talked about, um, people that show a terrific amount of chutzpah is those that overcome tremendous obstacles and they were able to get them out of the way and be successful. And talk about we'll talk about three of them in any order you want: Mickey Mantle, Nelson Mandela, and Mother Teresa.
Okay.
So,
Well, Mother Teresa I mentioned in the book, and I
right.
mention her, and I think it's even in the same paragraph as Steve Jobs. And
Mhm.
I kind of phrase it as so from a chutzpah perspective, how would you rank Mother Teresa and Steve Jobs? And I did it partially for the laughs because who links those two people together? And for most people, look what Steve Jobs accomplished. He was the guy with the chutzpah, right? He founded Apple. He left Apple. He was involved in other companies. He came back to Apple and then transformed it into the company that it is today. Mother Teresa, oh yeah, she was wonderful. She started a charity. Yet when I think about the skill sets, they're pretty similar. Now, Mother Teresa operated in an environment, in a hierarchy, where the role of women was not necessarily, I don't want to say as valued. It was valued in a different way. But when thinking in terms of who was the church going to fund for development projects, they were more likely to fund a male, a priest, a bishop, than a nun. Yet Mother Teresa, with the little money she got, managed to create a network of donors that helped people in tremendous need. That's chutzpah. Chutzpah isn't always about being taking a company public in Silicon Valley and becoming a billionaire, creating a unicorn company. That's one level. I consider that to be chutzpah on steroids. What Steve Jobs accomplished, what Elon Musk accomplishes on a regular basis. Chutzpah on steroids, absolutely. But what Mother Teresa did was also chutzpah on steroids. When we think about how that foundation, the charity network that's in place, benefits so many people today, long after she's gone. That was chutzpah. And from a more ordinary, or what I would consider to be my level, somebody who opens up a small business has chutzpah because they may be leaving the security of a salary, of benefits, the comfort of a job that's stable, and an income. But they're doing it because they want more than income for themselves and their family. Maybe they want to be in a position to create wealth, to hire others, to give back to the community in a different way, to improve upon a product or service that's out there, or to introduce something new.
Yeah.
So
Very good. Now, what about Nelson Mandela?
Nelson Mandela is a wonderful example of sticking to one's principles. Of, to me, part of chutzpah is a willingness to stretch boundaries. Now, those boundaries can be physical, as in space. They can be social, as in what Nelson Mandela basically accomplished and did. And they can also come at risk to your own well-being and even safety. So Nelson Mandela's chutzpah was about improving the living situation, the condition of people like him in a country where there were really two sets of laws, and one treated a class of people in a very draconian way. So his qualities, his inner strength, kept him going through his years in prison. And he became a hero and an inspiration to so many. His actions are the chutzpah that I admire.
And of course, if you grew up in New York City, the great Mickey Mantle and all that he overcame. Now, I know you didn't talk about him in your book, but just general thoughts.
General thoughts. The first baseball game I ever went to was a Mickey Mantle Bat Day doubleheader at the old Yankee Stadium. So let's think back to this. This is in the '60s,
I was
and
at that game.
and they were
Yeah,
giving away wooden bats to everybody who attended. This is
yeah.
New York. My, how things have changed. They won't give away ping pong balls because they're worried about people getting hurt. But
Oh,
they gave us all bats. And Mickey Mantle, his history, his background. You had a talented athlete coming from, what was it, Oklahoma? Am I right?
Oklahoma. That's right.
Oklahoma. So a slightly different culture than New York.
Yeah, a little
Okay,
bit.
a very different culture than New York. And he came to New York with this unassuming manner, again, talented, but managed to win over fans because he played with grit, with determination. He played at a higher level. It helps to be talented. It helps a heck of a lot more when you are determined to prove yourself on an everyday basis, to win, to propel your team forward, and to be a leader. So that's where I would say he fits. And this is the first Mickey Mantle question I've gotten as well. So this is good.
Yeah. So I I know a little bit more about his background, but in high school he was a high school All American or state selection. He was on his way to go to the University of Oklahoma as a running back, and he broke his leg as a senior in high school. So he switched to baseball, and then you have the rest of the story.
Yeah.
So
See, I
there's a
didn't
lot
know
of
that
history
part.
going on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so question for you, Mason Harris. Oh wait, hold on, before we get to that, we have a winner, Susan.
We do have a winner, and it's our own Lucelle O'Flaherty, guest 150,000 of Americans that still speak Yiddish. I think what her source may have said the U.S. and Canada, but she got the number right, 150,000.
That's it.
Congratulations, Lucelle. We'll get a book out to you. Thanks for playing the
Terrific,
game.
Lucille.
John
That,
Gorski also guessed 150,000, but he guessed it after Lucille did, so she gets the book. And he's getting
that's
one
Great.
anyway,
pretty.
so.
That's
Yeah.
very impressive because I was guessing in the like mid 20s.
Hmm.
Like, okay, 26 people still speaking Yiddish here.
Yeah, I was going to ask if Lucille speaks Yiddish as well, but I don't think so.
Maybe
But anyway,
Gaelic.
yeah, that's what I would think, Gaelic. So Mason, you have chutzpah.
Yes, I like to think so. As a matter of fact, I think this book was kind of the result of a bit of chutzpah. Um, COVID, the pandemic, hurt us all. People getting sick, people dying. I don't think I know anybody who wasn't touched or isn't more than 1 to 2 levels removed from somebody who lost his or her life, their life during COVID. Businesses were shut. People's life savings were wiped out. Um, a very fortunate few managed to do well during the pandemic, but for most of us, it was bad. As a somebody who had decided that I was going to go back full time into public speaking because I love the live audience, I love the interaction. I had selected January 2020 as my kickoff date. Well, by March, all that was gone. So everything was canceled. There were no live opportunities to speak, to share ideas, to be influenced by, and to influence others. So the first lesson there is if I recommend a stock to you, don't buy it because I'm going to be wrong. If I tell you this is a good time to go into public speaking, my history there hasn't been great. What I decided to do after reading books, because it gave me a chance to catch up on my reading, watching too much television and thinking to myself, is this Tiger King show real? Are people really as bad as it seems? I should stop watching. I decided to take the idea I'd had in my mind and some presentations I'd been giving that I called the Chutzpah Rules, and I originally developed for sales teams, kind of as a higher level. But the feedback that I had gotten was that It was more inspirational and motivational than people expected. So I pivoted and I decided, okay, I'm going to write the book. I'm going to make it valuable for people to see, to read from a self-help standpoint, but also for businesses. And that's why my examples and stories in the book, they're from all over the world, all over the place.
Yeah, there are some fascinating
One
stories
example
in
of
there.
my list.
Yeah, yeah. But there are, it's a wonderfully written book. There are a lot of good stories, touching, lives, sports, other celebrities. Very well done. So what's next for Mason? Where do you go from here? Another book?
Well, I am looking forward to getting back to live meetings because I'm optimistic they'll happen. I actually did do a live keynote presentation at a conference in Louisville, Kentucky, a little while ago. More will be opening up. I have developed more technical skills than I thought was possible, especially considering that I now have gray hair. Who would think that I could do Zoom, right? I mean, where is this coming from? But I'm developing those skills, and there will be more books because I believe that the Chutzpah Advantage, the model that I present, applies across many industries. So I've been contacted by a physician who has read the book and wants to do one using the Chutzpah model and wellness, both physical and emotional. I've also spoken to somebody who's in the nonprofit world and helps companies raise money, keep track of it, target their efforts even better. And there's a possibility of a book coming there. And then I found that aspiring authors who frequently have trouble making that decision, the carpe diem, I know I have a book in me and I've had it in my mind, but don't make the decision to move ahead and don't follow through on the other of the key behaviors. There's, I believe, a book there as well. So the Chutzpah Advantage for aspiring authors or artists, that type of thing. So I'm hoping there can be a series that helps people in other ways as well.
Yeah. Well, you could do a Madoff chutzpah of things not to do.
It's interesting, and I don't know how much more time we have, but chutzpah is a skill set. And as any skill set, it can be used for constructive or destructive purposes. So, for example, if you and I can choose to take a course in computer programming, and when we're done, you can write an algorithm that helps track vaccinations for COVID and its effectiveness. Or you might write an application that helps businesses be more productive with expense reporting directly from their phones. I might choose to write ransomware. Our skill set is the same. It's how we implement that makes the difference. So there's a story in the book, actually two stories, two businesses in New York again. One is a gentleman, and I use the term kind of loosely here, who in his teens became a drug dealer. And by the time he was 19, was earning $2 million a year and had 20 people working for him. He was eventually caught and sent to prison. This is a person that, quite frankly, as much as I love business and entrepreneurs, I'd be frightened to have a cup of coffee with. Okay, that's just my reality. On the other side, there is a person who, in the very crowded and difficult market that we call physical fitness facilities, decided that he developed a program to help people get into better shape. It was more effective, didn't require expensive equipment and stations to work in. So he started by doing classes in parks in New York, eventually rented a space, and he actually only hired ex-convicts because he felt that ex-convicts had difficulty getting jobs and he wanted to provide an opportunity for them. And I thought to myself, this is somebody I could easily sit across the table from and have a great conversation and share a or not share a coffee, but have a coffee and learn more about the person's life and business. Well, the interesting thing is it's the same person. This person, Cos Marte, and you can find his story on YouTube. You can find it in a TED speech. Went to jail, realized his doctor told him he was probably going to die in jail, even though he was 19, 20 years old, because he was morbidly obese, that if he didn't lose the weight, he wasn't going to make it out of prison. Well, he just had a son, and he swore to himself he was going to get out, he was going to change his life, because he had an obligation to be there for his son. Well, in prison, he worked out in an isolation prison cell and lost 70, then 100 pounds, and moved back into the main group with the other prisoners and was teaching them how to work out. Well, that became the basis for his business. Now, he didn't leave thinking he was going to go into business and open a health facility. He could not get a job. So when I said that the owner only hired ex-convicts, it's because he realized that they were at a significant disadvantage. And then, not given the opportunity, the chances that they would fall back into a life of crime was very high. Just as he was desperate, he wanted to turn around and provide a good result to others. So that's an example of the good and the bad of chutzpah. It's a skill set. People choose to use it however they want, but it's the same skills that will take you to a successful life, a successful business, or can end up putting you in jail.
Same skills. It's just a matter of which way you go.
You mentioned Bernie Madoff. I guarantee when Madoff started his investment company, his intention was not to steal $60 billion.
Yeah.
His intention was to be better than anybody else. The skills that made his company grow were the same skills he put in use when the market changed. And he couldn't keep the company going in the same way, so it became a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Mason, thank you for coming on. You've been a tremendous guest, and I hope you get out there live and tell the chutzpah story and inspire people to do what you preach in there. And I think they can have some wonderful success. And thanks for coming on.
Ralph, thank you, and thank you, Susan. It has been a pleasure. And for the winners of our trivia contest tonight, I look forward to getting books out to you. And I thank you all for paying attention to tonight's broadcast. And hopefully some point down the road, we'll meet again.
That sounds
Sure.
great, Mason. I do have one question for you that one of our viewers, Tracy Lazarus, asked. Thank you so much, Tracy, for playing Trivia Game and asking the question. And it is, where can people buy the book?
Amazon controls the market. You can find it on almost any online bookstore. If you're in the D.C. area, Politics and Prose has a handful of copies if you want to see it physically. Amazon, it's on sale at the moment. So it's kind of like, wow, is it on sale because they have too many copies left and they can't get rid of them? Or is it on sale because they think it's so good they want to get it out to people? I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'd say that's the place you'll get it quickest and best right now. But I also support our local bookstores. So whatever's most convenient. But thank you for asking that question.
Sure. Yep. Great question, Tracy. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you both. Ralph, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And Mason, what a pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation and made me really think about chutzpah. And I've often thought it was a good thing. I've been told by plenty of my teachers growing up, I had a lot of chutzpah, and I don't think they all meant it in a positive way, but now it serves me well. You know, you are what you are, right?
Well, you've proven them all wrong, and you're not in jail. So good things have come from your chutzpah.
There we go. So I'll take that. Thank you so much. All right, guys, take care. Okay.
I sincerely
See you guys soon.
All right. Okay, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight for ZTV. Please tune in 1 week from tonight, Tuesday, October 26th at 7 p.m. The Virginia Amos show will be on, and she'll be interviewing Florence King, who's the independent candidate for Alexandria City Council. So Virginia's interviews are fantastic, and we're all looking forward to hearing what Florence King has to say. So please tune in then. Also, make sure you stay tuned to our Facebook page. There's no show tomorrow night. There might be one Thursday night. Not one scheduled, but you never know when it's going to come on. We have some surprises that we're working on. So please stay tuned to our Facebook page for all the most current listings. And until then, until we meet again, and whenever you can, remember to be the good news in someone's life.